live, and Steve Ploetz is here. What's up, buddy?
I've got my plethora of ammunition,
Yes,
which leads right into our conversation, but I am ready to not have a coughing fit on Facebook Live.
Well, here is, so I'll give the genesis of this, and what's really interesting is this is actually an old article, but it popped up and got reshared more this past few weeks when we started having this stuff with Iran. Or Iran, I think is how it's technically pronounced, Iran. So I sent it to you and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And you're like, let's do it. So this is the article here. It says, what happens to the market if America goes to war? And we were talking about, well, is this something that will trickle to real estate? Will it get to real estate? Will it affect real estate? And ultimately, how do you do something about that? Is there a way to prepare for it? Is there a smarter thing to do versus not do? Or is this something where you just have to kind of wait and see what happens and then react? So can you be proactive or do you have to be reactive when it comes to something like this? I think it's a very interesting topic. Also, I wanted to get your opinion, so I'm going to hit you with a question. I'm going to hit you over the head with one here.
I'm ready.
So I like to do this to Steve. I have him trapped here. So I'm a home buyer. I'm buying new construction. I'm buying in North County, let's call it even Temecula. Mm-hmm. I have an incentive. Now we know how this incentive stuff works from the new builds.
Incentive?
The builders give you an incentive to use their in-house lender, okay? So, oh, by the way, we're gonna do license numbers. I'm NMLS 155010.
Oh, I like it.
And Steve is DRE 0172372. I
feel like this is at the end of those radio commercials where they have
we get it out of the way, baby.
Speed really quickly through it.
So
no cost.
But you may die slowly. So we don't have any of that. We like to be upfront with y'all. Now, that said, so I'm buying. We know they give the incentive. They say, hey, use the in-house lender. And they'll usually just speak this. Mm-hmm. Oh, if you should talk to these guys, we'll give you seller credit, which is a credit toward closing costs, right? When you're buying, you have to bring all of your down payment. Whatever your down payment is, you can't get a credit from the seller for your down payment. You can get it for closing costs, and also to buy the rate down, so you can get it for both. So I'm doing that. What is your experience typically with the in-house lender, and do you, for a builder, a new build, and do you know the trick about the seller credit?
Oh, I like it. Well, excuse me. First of all, I would say to me, there are some similarities to dual agency. So when the builder is having you use their lender, it's similar, it's in the same category as when the listing agent is also representing the buyer. Whose interest does the builder have in mind? Their own. They are interested in selling that property quickly, easily, smoothly, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And so the way that they set it up is, Mr. Buyer or Miss Buyer, we have a lot of interest. We have 10 phases, but we only release them one phase at a time. So there's only 3 houses left, and this is the only one left of this model. So you need to move on it right now. They want to increase a little bit of pressure. And what we would like to do is in order to make things seamless, if you use our lender, we will also give you a credit, either a seller credit or through a lender credit. And it's very important, in my opinion, for the buyer to recognize where is that credit coming from. Is that a lender credit or is that a seller credit? Or, because sometimes, I don't want to say those are interchangeable, but that they will pose it in a way where the buyer isn't really positive where it's coming from.
Correct.
Very important to identify where is that coming from. Because if that's a seller credit, then whether you use the builder's lender or your own lender, you're still getting that same credit.
They have to give it to you.
They have to give it to you.
He does know the trick. I just had to put him to the test. I know he's sick today, but just so everyone knows, I give this man no mercy. None. No mercy. Because you're right, whether it doesn't matter, ultimately. You over there, Corey?
No, but we can keep it on me for the whole time.
No, we can't. We're going to argue, and I want to be seen. What's up, Robert? So, and we are live on Facebook. Feel free to chime in. Yeah, fine print, exactly. So, they sort of lean the conversation in that direction and try to make you think or sort of assume like, oh, okay, well, if we use their lender, they're going to give us a credit. That makes sense. But you're right. Lender credit is different than a seller credit. A
Hold
seller,
on, I am sick. There was something in my ears there. Oh, one more time. Corey, can you play it back? You're right. Oh, that's right. Derek said, I got it. Keep going.
You got it right. You got it. So lender credit versus seller credit. If it's a seller credit, it apply to any lender, which means if they're saying, hey, we're going to give you, an $8,000 seller credit, then you can use that for whatever lender you choose.
Correct. And there's a variety of different places you can use it. You can use it for closing costs. Sometimes they'll give you incentives towards upgrades, finishes, a variety of different things.
Yeah. It just goes on the ledger.
Yes, it's just something to look at and figure out who is providing this credit.
At this pace, Steve is going to go through 18 T's during this conversation.
It's fantastic. I'm going to be hopped up on some green tea.
We are we are going to have a lot of trouble feeding you this many T's. Okay, just want to make sure you understood that. And in general, your experience with the builders lenders been okay?
It has been okay. I mean, I would say there is a familiarity between the seller, the builder, and the builder's lender. And so that makes things a little bit, there's the perception that makes things smoother. But it's not in actuality all that much smoother. There still is the same arm's length process in terms of the lender needs to hire an appraiser, et cetera, et cetera. It's not, I think it's set up in such a way that the idea is, oh, we got the inside track. It
appears to be more convenient than it is.
It appears to be more convenient. And on top of that, they're providing this credit and they're providing all these incentives, which of course is, as you know from the lending side, we're all playing with the same numbers here. And that really what's happening is the addition of fees and throwing those fees on there, which I know you guys do not have.
I want to know where it's coming from. Like who is actually covering this? That's the thing that's interesting to me to try to figure out. Is it, is the mortgage side eating this, but they're calling it a seller credit because they have to for legal purposes? Is it, I just wonder where they're actually burying, the line that draws you to that credit. But okay, anyway, I digress. The reason I asked you that question, the reason I had to hit you with that today, it's your client.
Oh.
And it's a secret, but it's your client. Okay, war with Iran. What happens if America goes to war? I have a question for you.
Hit me.
Will it affect San Diego real estate if America goes to war, and why?
Yes or no? Ready, go.
There could be yes or no or no change. So there's three options.
Well, I would say, so for me, it's easier to look at markets. And as we have talked about, there are similarities in the stock market. It is not the same as residential real estate, but there are similarities. And I would say that when we look at the stock market is uncomfortable with uncertainty. And war has a tendency to create some uncertainty, and so that's why it impacts that market. Real estate, residential real estate, in my opinion, is so different because what impacts me as an individual as to why I am purchasing has less to do with the global economy and what's going on in the global market and more to do with what's happening with me right now. I'm getting moved, I'm getting a job, my wife is pregnant. These types of things impact my market of what I am purchasing.
But by that rationale, nothing would ever affect you then. If you rationalize it that way, then there's nothing that could change.
I mean, it's a great point, and I see what you're saying, and I would say at the same time, I would say it needs the uncertainty that happens within the market, and certainly if we go to war and my 401k gets impacted in a very negative way, then absolutely it impacts my ability to purchase. Even though I may not use my 401k in order to purchase, it puts us a little bit in a situation where, sweetheart, let's circle the wagons here a little bit. Let's see what happens. Let's wait. What was interesting about that article that you sent is overall, and in our lifetimes, we've now gone through a few wars, some of them being more significant than others, Desert Storm, certainly 9/11, etc. And that overall it showed there wasn't some significant impact overall. I think that
there were other things going on though.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in this scenario, and every conflict scenario is different because of the timing, because of what's happening in the market, etc. The short answer is, in my opinion, would there be any significant changes in San Diego's residential real estate market if we went to war with Iran? The answer is no.
Wrong.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
1 for 2. If Tony Gwynn was 1 for, he's in the Hall of Fame and he betted career, we was 1 for 3.
So here's the multiple, okay. So first of all, we're not saying that we're going to go to war with Iran. So let's make that very clear. In fact, I don't think that that will even happen. But if you really look, if you think of the things that have happened recently and you think that is an indication that we will go to war with Iran, then we've been at war with Iran already for a long, long time. Because this has been going on since the 70s. The stuff that's been happening now, the little attacks here and there and the back and forth and the rhetoric, that's been going on for decades. So, but if you want to talk about actually like a declaration of war, you know, we're sending troops there to fight a ground battle in the open. Now it's just like a bunch of different laser, you know, type missions. And that's probably what's going to continue to be. But if we went to war with Iran, or anyone else for that matter, it absolutely will affect the market. But here's the hard part. We don't know how.
Right.
Because remember, the market gets scared, as Steve mentioned. When the market gets scared, sometimes stocks will sell off. But if the market isn't that scared, they'll take that money and they'll reinvest into bonds. And if they do that, then interest rates go down. And if interest rates go down, we know that that has been the main driver for real estate prices has been interest rates. You can see it. It's right there. It doesn't happen immediately, but over long periods of time, it definitely does happen. Look what happened when the Fed dropped rates. I mean, the market started getting cold.
Right. Yeah. And
The Fed came in,
Yeah.
said, we're on this thing. Here comes some more QE, like it or not. And boom, right there, immediately, market picked back up and ran straight up, and it's been going straight up since.
And to your point, when it went with the discussion of uncertainty, I mean, when you think about when Trump took office, there was a lot of initial thought that Hillary would take office and that therefore the market had that built in. And then when Trump took office, there was the uncertainty where people thought, maybe this isn't what we expected. And the market went crazy. And it went up and appreciated like
Nuts.
absolutely nuts.
It's been nuts.
And so,
Dow's almost at 30,000.
yeah, and so I wouldn't necessarily say that the market does try to build in what's going to happen into their pricing.
It does.
So that if things go as planned, that it's already built in, which what I thought was interesting about the article that you sent is I think that it said it qualified wartime as 40 days, 4 months prior to the declaration of war, probably because the market is recognizing, hey, things are changing, so let's build that in.
The market will know. And so I guess the biggest piece of takeaway from this, I want to deliver value on this right here, right now, is that if you don't want to have yourself in a situation where you don't have a plan if the market changes. You always want to have a strategy when it comes to real estate. You want to have hopefully a long-term strategy. If you have a short-term investment going on, so there's 4 different strategies you can have. This is all part of my video that I recently made. In fact, I uploaded it last night, The Smarter Way to Buy a Home in San Diego. Check that out. There's 4 different, essentially, strategies that you would have. Short-term investment, long-term investment, a flip, and a long-term residence. Those are the 4. So even if you're doing a short-term investment, which could be 3 to 5 years, you want to make sure that you have a plan in place where you can't get hurt by something like this. You need to have a backup plan. You need to have a backup strategy. These types of things, if something like this can ruin you from a real estate perspective, then you don't have a good strategy in place. So my concern is only for the people who have walked blindly into transactions, who have blindly invested in real estate, who have purchased primary residences without a game plan, without a strategy, without actually knowing what's going on, just saying, I like that house, I can afford it, cool, I'll buy it. But they don't actually have an exit strategy. They don't have a game plan. There is no strategy. So if you don't have a homeownership strategy, then those are the people who will get hurt by something like this. Because like I said, it's so finicky and so fragile that if we go to war over there, it could actually be good for interest rates. Could be good for real estate here. People could flock here. People could run from that area of the world and come here. And if the stock market goes down, but the market isn't scared enough to go cash, then they'll put it into bonds. Interest rates will go down, and that will also help propel prices higher.
So
hold on. I'm not done with that point.
Hold on.
I'm not done with that point. So if that's the case, then it's a really good thing. But if we start fighting here, if an attack happens here, if another 9/11 happens, if even something similar starts happening, then you're going to see really, really bad issues. Now, I don't think any of that's going to happen, but if it were, that would be the situation. You want to have a strategy in place where you can hold strong through those things, where you're not going to be affected by those things. So if you're making a short-term investment, there better be a damn good reason. It better not be just because, yeah, I think prices will go up. No, it better be because you've decided, hey, in this area, they've allocated money, they're rebuilding the schools within 5 years. Things are going to be different here.
And you're talking short-term investment.
Short-term investment.
Right.
For the short-term investment, 3 to 5 years. Right. And the long-term investment could be 10 plus years. And in that case, who cares? Who cares what's going on? You should be making your money on your rent. You're making money over time with your appreciation. There's going to be ups and downs in the market. But if you have a long-term outlook, that doesn't matter. During the downs, guess what? You pay less taxes. Get your taxes reassessed. Every time you think the market goes down, ask for a reassessment.
Right.
Pay less taxes. So the point is, the main thing is, if you have a strategy, you won't get hurt by this. If you don't, you will. And that's the problem. And I know a lot of people who get hurt, it's because they didn't really know when they got into it. They didn't think about what is going to be my exit strategy, or what is going to be, ultimately our way of getting out of this. Are we just going to sell it when we're done with it? Are we going to sell it when it goes up a certain amount? Are we going to sell it when we're just ready for something else? Are we never going to sell it? They haven't asked themselves these questions, and I think that's the big mistake, Steve.
So, to Robert's point, I got only 7 seconds left before I lose my voice entirely. My question to you is, if going to war were imminent, which it's not, but if it were, what would you be suggesting to buyers today? And I realize that that's kind of an unfair question because of
No, it's fair.
Maybe it's flipping, maybe it's long-term investing, but what are you recommending right now?
So if it were imminent, regardless of whether it were, we build a strategy based on what makes sense for an individual, right? So the strategy for purchase does not change. What can change, though, is the strategy for exit. So, for example, if, let's say, someone's in the military and they're a VA buyer, and they have to think about, well, I might get deployed, they could PCS me, even though I was expecting to stay here, but based on all these tensions going on over there, a bunch of more people are going to get PCS, so I could get PCS in that direction. We just have to make sure that the long-term strategy makes sense. Because if you buy a long-term residence or a long-term investment, you always have to look at, what can I rent this for?
Right.
And is there enough cushion that if the market gets hit 10%, that I'm still going to be okay? And if that's the case, then you're in a pretty safe position. So it's just all about making the right strategy up front, so that once you've got that in place, you have an exit regardless of what's going on.
I love the idea of having a plan, and honestly, I think that's one of the big things that I pitch to people is they don't have a home ownership plan, and that's something that I've actually stolen from you. A few things I've stolen from you over the years. I like that tie as well, the pink one. But I think that becomes the process, is that when it comes to their financial independence, there is a thought like, well, you just put your money away into your 401k. That has come into the norm, I would say. But when it comes to building a homeownership strategy, a homeownership plan, whether you rent currently and you're trying to figure out how to get there, or you're looking at investment properties, or even looking ahead at an exit strategy, I will tell you, in 15 years, I've never had a conversation with a buyer, I mean very, very rarely, where we are in the process of purchasing and we're talking about what do things look like in 5, 7, 10 years, and how do we pivot? Are you keeping this as a rental? Are you trading up, et cetera? I think it's so valuable, and I think that, to me, that's the big takeaway, is there is so much going on in the global economy that we cannot control, but we can control our strategy, our plan, and making sure that we're pivoting appropriately when the time is necessary.
100%, man. And so the big thing there is, here's what they want you to do, okay? You want to know what they want you to do? I'll tell you. I'm going to rant. They want you to go to school, be a good little boy and girl, mind your P's and Q's, don't get detention, then go to college afterwards, get a bunch of student debt. Then once that's done, go get married, spend a bunch of money on a wedding when you don't really need to. And then after that, they want you to buy a house. Now they want you to go and get a 30-year mortgage and just make your payments every month for 30 years. This is what they want you to do.
So far, it sounds pretty good.
Be a good little boy and girl, right? But if you're savvy, or if you have the stones, or if you just are lucky enough to just know someone who does, or who can give you the insight, then you can win a little bit more on every single one of those things. You can win a little bit better. The number one class that I would go in and teach at the OBT in Claremont High School was about investing in your college and whether it makes sense to do so or not. Is it a smart, I'm gonna actually do a segment with someone, this is already planned, look out for this one, it's gonna be awesome. Should you go to college or buy a house?
Oh.
Instead? Or just buy a house. Instead of going to college, buy a home. Because if you're gonna spend $80,000, $100,000 on college, you could easily get a down payment to buy a home. So we have some very interesting numbers. A ton of research was done for this segment. That's why it's still going to be a few weeks from now. But the point is this. When you look at your mortgage, how you pay off your home, when you look at the way that it's structured from the standpoint of, okay, well, how do we make payments on this? How long are we going to be here? What are the tax advantages for us? How do we maximize those? And then how do we accelerate from there? Do we need the tax advantage? Does the tax advantage make sense for us? For our tax bracket, do we itemize? Should we itemize if we get this? We have more things that we could itemize if we did itemize using this. There's a bunch of little intricacies you got to look at. It's funny because the gentleman I met with yesterday, he said, I was showing him some of these things and he goes, man, this is what rich people do. It's
yeah,
like
they plan.
They plan and they have all the little intricacies figured out. They have every single edge that they can get and they take advantage of it. And that's exactly what you should do. There's absolutely no reason not to. This is a big debt that you're getting when you get a mortgage, right? When you buy a house, you're getting a big loan. You should absolutely optimize that thing. You should absolutely optimize your entire experience with it. The whole thing should be optimized from top to bottom. If it's not, then you're just leaving money on the table. You're being a good little boy and girl, and everyone out there who makes money off of that will be very happy with you for it. But I suggest you don't be. Let's be rebellious. Let's be a little bit selfish here when it comes down to it, because your hard-earned net money that you've paid taxes on, you've done your duty. Told you I was going to rant for a second.
And you know what? Your message is so much stronger with that Sharpie in your hand. I need a Sharpie from now on. I'm bringing in a Sharpie next time.
Okay, so let's see. Bobby Martins has usually got something to say. I really doubt we'll be going to war with Iran. Agreed, Bobby. And the traditions of anything, it will just be a bomb dropping from above. Yeah, no land war. Probably true. He said when we invaded Afghanistan, it didn't do anything to slow down the real estate market from 2002 to 2006. That's true, but I'll remind you also, Bobby, in 2002 to 2006, we had a lot of subprime loans going on. We had a lot of stuff happening that it doesn't exist in the market now, right? A lot of things that were sort of propping up the market artificially that no longer exist. So I'm going to end with this, Steve, because I know we got borrowed time with you today in your voice. Make sure you plan. When you are ultimately, getting into something where you're buying a home or where you're considering selling a home, make sure you have a plan. Make sure that it makes sense for ultimately what you want to see happen. And if you work with great professionals and people who care about you and who you trust, you should listen to them, but you've got to communicate to them what your goals are. You got to communicate to them what's important to you. If you do that, they will help you accomplish it. That's a big part of the video that I made that I published last night. I suggest you check it out, The Smarter Way to Buy a Home in San Diego. It's on the YouTube channel. I suggest that you check that out because that's what it's all about. It's all about understanding, not only how to locate great professionals, but also how to utilize them, how to trust, and how to structure and organize communicating with them the things that are important to you. It's very easy to do. You just got to have someone show you how to do it, and that's what I try to do here every week.
I feel smarter already.
Boom, you should. You have been made smarter. You admitted it. Steve Ploetz, ladies and gentlemen, and his wallet are leaving the building. I'm going to let them off the hook. Share this video with your friends. Let's help make them smarter than everyone else.